However, we're not quite there yet, so bear with.
Between life and death, really.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Northern Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Vince Hunt, the Vice Chairman of this committee, chairing the meeting today in the absence of Councillor Paul Wynne, who is the Chairman. We're not expecting a fire drill today, and in the event of an alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the building. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I ask you to please ensure that your mobile phones are switched off and ensure the volume on your laptops is muted. To ensure that members of this committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, may I advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public. It is not a public meeting. And if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. Members should ensure that they're present throughout the meeting, as you cannot vote on an item if you've not heard the full debate. Can members and officers introduce themselves each time they speak so those listening know who is speaking? And I'm now going to ask members of the committee and then officers to introduce themselves. Nat, we will start with you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Nat Green, Quarry and Coast. You have a place in the will.
No, it's not. Steve Davenport, St Martin, Duddleston and Duddleston Heath.
Julian Dean, Court Hill.
Gary Burton, Bagwell.
Both Barrow, St Oswald.
Steve Charnley, Whittington. Colin Taylor, Elverley and Clatherley.
Roger Evans, London, Division.
Okay.
Andy McGee, Policy and Environment Service Manager and Service there.
Jane Raymond, Senior Planning Officer.
John Shaw, Principal Planning Officer.
Philip Mullen, Development Manager.
James Felton, Solicitor, Shropshire Council.
And Emily Marshall, Committee Officer.
Thank you, everybody. So we will move on to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence. We've had apologies from Councillor Jeff Elner, who is being substituted by Councillor Steve Davenport. Apologies from Councillor David Vasmer, who is being substituted for by Councillor Colin Taylor. And obviously, as I said earlier, Councillor Paul Wynne. So item 2 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of February 2024. Can I have somebody to propose? Or somebody to second? I assume as no other hands are being raised, everybody is content with those minutes. Who seconded it? Councillor Joyce Barrow. All those in favour? I'm assuming there will be one abstention from you, Colin, as you weren't here. Two abstentions. Good. Excellent, thank you. So item 3 is public questions, and I can advise you that none have been received. Item 4 is disclosable pecuniary interests, and can we turn the lottery off on the bing bongs, please, on your computers? Please mute. Nat, start with you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, item 5, I have to declare a pecuniary interest as the applicant has had dealings with our company in the past. I will therefore take no part in that. And item 7, I am the division councillor and that I will speak and then I shall leave the room. And in fact, due to a pressing engagement, I shall then leave the meeting. So I shall not return.
Escape. Please turn the door. Thank you. I'm looking around. Are there any others that wish to be declared? No, excuse me, rustling my papers. Then we will move on to the applications themselves. We will start with the land east of the A529 Woodseas mark in Shropshire. John, are you presenting this? John.
Sure. Yes, this application for the change of use of lands to a gypsy travel site, 2 family pitches, which will include the erection of an amenity buildings, improvement of access, and installation of sewage treatment plant. Okay, next slide. So before we move on, I'd say I'd refer the members to the update sheets. You will note that 2 letters of objection have been received and which have been reduced on the update sheets. The response of the officers to these comments are also on the sheet. There are no updates to the report itself. The application has been referred to committee for determination as the planning officer is recommending approval, contrary to the opinion local member and the parish council, who both object to the scheme and provided material reasons for this objection. So yeah, as you can see on the slide, this is the site, the centre in hashed in red. The site is within the settlement of Woodseaves, which is the site is set. The settlement is set equidistant between Market Lane to the north and Hinstock to the south. Approximately 2.2 miles between both settlements. Shropshire is to the east. The land is located to the east of the A529 with access off Haywood Lane, a C-classified road. The site area extends to approximately 0.17 hectares and is currently described as a vacant paddock. It forms a triangular piece of land set to essentially within Woodseaves. Go back to the photos, please. Yeah, so you can see on the left photograph, that's the access into the site. The middle photograph is taken at the junction between Haywood Lane, which is on the left there, and A529, which is just after shot to the right. And the right photograph is indeed the A529, and the site is just to the left there beyond the headroom. So that's a little bit, a few photographs of the site itself. Yeah, this is the site block plan. As you can see, it's for 2 traveller pitches, which will be located in the right corner there as you look on the plan. There will be 1 amenity block, 1 static caravan, and 1 touring caravan. To the north end of the site, you would have a pony paddock. It should be noted that during the application has been reduced from 3 pitches to 2, and also the amenity blocks, which is the next slide, please. Actually, one more. These are 2 amenity blocks on site. The original proposal had 1 very large amenity block, which has been removed. Now we have 2. We can see there. To the access. Yeah. So I don't want to repeat the report, which all members will have seen. I will briefly summarise the reason for approval and touch on a few key salient points from the report. I think the first point to note is the site history. On the site, there was a refusal for 1 open market dwelling, and to be clear, this was refused because it is an open market dwelling within a countryside location. Woodseaves does not have a defined settlement boundary, therefore is not being a suitable site for open market homes. The application that we have today, as you know, is for a gypsy travel pitch, and in accordance with CS12, it is considered that it would be compliant with that key policy of the core strategy. And key reasons for this is because even though the Woodseaves itself does not have a range of facilities, of any facilities, the site is close to key settlements that do have, including Market Drayton, which is a 3-minute drive along the A529. There's also, as I say, mentioned earlier before, Shropshire and Hinstock. It is accepted for a gypsy and traveller pitch that they do not have to be within defined settlement boundaries. They need to simply be close by. That is the wording of the policy. And a short drive is deemed in this case to be sufficiently close by to be a sustainable location for a gypsy and traveller pitch. It should also be drawn attention to the personal circumstances of the applicants, which should weigh in favour of the case. And they do currently reside nearby in Stoke-upon on a gypsy site in Stoke-on-Tern, but they are not the names travellers on that site, so they could be removed from that site when the named travellers return from travelling. There's also 2 young children who would be part of the group, so the interest of the child should also be considered for a case such as this. In addition to this, the local policy in terms of site allocation and the national government policy, the PPTS, is clear that we should be supportive of private gypsy sites, subject to them being sustainable. and other criteria. And the officer's view that it meets those relevant criteria. Weighed against the benefits highlighted in the report, there will be limited visual and landscape harm. However, it's considered that the site compliance with national and local gypsy and travel policies in relation to accessibility to local settlements and the circumstances of the family would outweigh this harm to justify approval. There are significant number of conditions, 19 in total, which relate to landscape, several matters, landscape, highways, ecology, materials, and subject to all of these conditions, which we have any harm that has been identified will be overcome. And therefore, the application is recommended for approval, subject to these conditions recommended in Appendix 1 at the end of the committee report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, we do have 4 speakers on this. I will take them in the order they're on my piece of paper. That will include the local member, Rob Gittins, who will come in third. But to start with, and speaking against, is a statement from Andy Parsons, which will be read by James Felton, our solicitor. James.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, this is a statement submitted by Andy Parsons, a local resident, who states as follows. I object to the application and take issue with the case officer report on the basis that it places undue weight on the relevance of gypsy/traveller heritage and perceived individual needs of one family. It fails to take proper account of the impact of the proposed development on the established community in contravention of the guidance contained in Core Strategy 6. CS12, relating to gypsy/traveller site provision, states that all sites must comply with the requirements of CS6. The latter requires that the LPA ensures that all development protects, restores, conserves and enhances the natural, built and historic environment and is appropriate in scale, density, pattern and design, taking into account the local context and character. At no stage in the officer report is any reference made to the character and context of the existing structures which border the site. Within metres of the proposed plots on the southern boundary is the restored manor cottage, which apparently dates back to 1625. To the west, the site is immediately overlooked by 2 19th century detached character properties, Cargrave Cottage and Chapel House. Both were historically used as the local schoolhouse. To the east are a number of barn conversions and Woodseaves Grange. The proposal to construct a modern mobile home site with utility blocks in the very centre of this historical cluster is in total breach of CS6 and would have significant wider visual and landscape impact. CS12 requires that suitable screening should be incorporated for traveller sites. The lack of existing adequate screening is further aggravated by the need to remove existing hedging to create visibility splays along the eastern boundary. New hedges would take several years to establish, whilst high fencing would be visually unacceptable. The original proposal by the applicant was to build a family bungalow. Despite no local resident objections, this was rejected by the LPA, not only because of planning policy, but also because of the site-specific harm associated with the incursion of built development into the rural hinterland, unnecessarily impacting on the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside. In clear contradiction, the case officer now seeks to relegate the scale of this harm, believing that the individual needs of a family take precedent. CS12 states that proposals for pitches and sites will be subject to the same general development criteria as any other type of development. Referring to the PPTS, the officer views the personal circumstances of the family as being highly material to this application. No mention is made, however, of the relevance of the applicant's initial preference for an open market bungalow. The previous application did not rely upon traveller heritage. I argue that if personal circumstances are to be used as justification, the recent documented willingness of the applicant to occupy a conventional open market property is highly relevant. PPTS states that the LPA should consider existing levels of local provision for sites and the availability of alternative accommodation. A multiple plot traveller site has already been approved in Market Drayton, and there is also a surfeit of open market properties in the area, including privately sited static caravans and bungalows near to the applicant's existing home. The failure to appropriately consider policies CS6 and CS12 would justify judicial review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And next we have, again speaking against, Councillor Terry Hodge from Sutton upon Tern Parish Council. Terry, welcome. Thank you for being here. You have 3 minutes. Would you like a 30-second warning, or are you content to keep half an hour on the clock?
I'm content to keep half an hour on the clock. Thank you.
All right, I won't disturb you then.
I did have a written statement, but my printer broke, so I can't use my phone, so I will just speak as I can. So there is a statement that has been submitted by the Parish Council in objection to this, referencing CS6 and the previous planning application for an open market bungalow. I think from our point of view, this is a very unfortunate set of circumstances. Shropshire Council rejected the bungalow on the basis of open market. I do not believe that anybody advised the applicants that they could rebid for local needs and to build a local needs bungalow. The rejection cited the size of the plot, the light pollution, the reference to the use in the local area. The new plans actually put buildings that are bigger in size than the original bungalow. So we have the interesting situation where a rejection was put in because it was for an open market bungalow. We now have the applicants appealing and putting in larger buildings instead of what was rejected out of hand by the council. So the planning people rejected this. They've now come along, and as from the statements, circumstances and demographics are changing the view of the council, which isn't necessarily helpful. I would like to point out that there are no pavements past a few hundred yards past there. There is no public transport. And if there are children, then a few miles to Market Drayton, if you have no car, if there's problems on the roads, is a very long way. So this is not a great situation for the people moving there. It's not a great situation for the planning process. And we object on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we have the local member, as I said earlier, Councillor Rob Gittins is the local ward member. Rob, you get 5 minutes. I'm sure you won't need a 30-second warning. And no. Welcome, Rob. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Thank you. Right, thank you, Chair and committee. Just before I start my statement, I would like to take this opportunity to declare a non-registrable interest, as my parents own both number 30 and 31 Manor Cottages, which sit adjacent and just south to the site. That's it, yeah, just there. Which this application deals with, and having taken legal advice, I will make a statement purely as the local member and then leave the room. Okay. In my almost 7 years of being a councillor, I've never received such an overwhelming response to a planning application as this one. I can see that literally every resident in every house within a 1 mile radius has commented on this application. That in itself is a phenomenal response, for such a small area, which leaves me under no illusion about the strength of feeling about this application locally. And I wish I could think of another word stronger than divisive, which isn't always a quite heavily used word. Over the last 6 months, residents have raised many concerns, but I'll go through just a couple of the main ones which have been raised with me more often than not, and which I'd like members of this committee to take the opportunity to challenge officers on. One, I was going to talk about the amenity block, but I think they've suddenly changed the plans to make it smaller. As the previous speaker mentioned, there was quite a large amenity block that was originally put in, and I was going to question the size of that. Two, this application sits within a fairly dense residential area, both to the west and the south. This application is not in keeping within the local area, and in fact is grossly out of character. The site's not typical of other gypsy sites which sit within the Cheswardine division or wider area, which have a tendency to be built in more isolated areas. 3, I'd like members to consider the general impact on the local community, with at least according to the block plan and an additional 80+ car parking spaces and cars on the road network, and using what are considered locally to be a very dangerous junction where a large number of near misses occur. This data is not collected by the council, only KSI data, which means someone unfortunately has to be killed or seriously injured in order for officers to take note. Finally, and I know this is not a material planning consideration, but could I ask members to take a step back and have a think about the morality of passing such an awful application? Previously, there was an application on the same site for an open market dwelling. This was quite rightly refused as policy sees Woodseaves as open countryside. But also just around the corner from this site, I have desperately been trying for a number of years now to help a local young man in his 20s to obtain planning permission for a local needs dwelling, which officers firmly reject time and time again. How can it be right that the average tax-paying citizen can't obtain planning permission? How can it be right that a local young 20-year-old who's lived in the area their whole life can't obtain planning permission for a local needs dwelling, but officers obviously feel it's okay to dump a gypsy site right in the heart of a residential community? Residents could, and quite rightly, say they are being discriminated against just simply because they're of non-gypsy origin. How is this right? And I really hope members really consider the moral impact of passing such a divisive and horrendous application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I will ask members to disregard completely the comment made in that about dumping a gypsy site, because that is not a proper comment to make, really. Inappropriate. Okay. And finally, for Councillor, the agent, Trevor Minnell. Trevor.
Good afternoon, Chair and members.
Would you like a, just before you start, would you like a 30-second warning, or are you token?
I'll be on three, thank you.
The clock will start from when you speak. Sorry.
Okay, my name is Trevor Mennell. I am the planning agent for Henry Toogood and his family. The current planning application has been amended throughout the process from 3 pitches to 2 at the request of the planning officer. It was noted during the application there were some principal concerns of the parish council, where many of the points raised have now been dealt with within the documents submitted during the process. A thorough report has been presented to members by Case Officer John Shaw, and comments from the council's Gypsy Liaison Officer can vary by this. The council's up-to-date local plan policy was adopted back in 2015. Its replacement, the new local development plan, is not in place and is still under ministerial review and is not likely to be fully signed off before 2025 to include planning policy for gypsy and traveller accommodation. The planning inspectors have reviewed the council's evidence of the proposed local plan, and they have raised issues relative to that evidence for provision of sites for gypsy and traveller accommodation, stating even when the local plan comes into force, the council's gypsy and traveller accommodation proposals will be 8 years out of date and require a new GTAA now, which could take 6 months, delaying the examination process even further. The council have responded saying this will have a financial burden on the council's limited budget where significant savings are required. Council have further requested the issue of gypsy and traveller accommodation need be removed from the review. This further confirms the desperate need for pitches recognised by the inspectors and lack of council finance to address this matter. My client owns the lands and ticks all the boxes of the national planning policy framework for the conversion to a traveller site. The council cannot demonstrate an up-to-date supply of deliverable sites and have no available pitches as confirmed by the Gypsy liaison team. Consequently, the Toogood family are requesting the committee approval of a permanent planning permission. It is clear the council has insufficient funding to provide future gypsy and traveller sites, and there is necessity for gypsy and travellers to provide their own sites and obtain planning approval, which is more beneficial. The family have 2 young children, one at nursery with a 3rd child due in 3 months. The applicant's mother is in her 80s and needs regular medical attention, all of which has significant weight in support of my client's planning application. Overall, it has been established that there is an absence of alternative sites. The personal circumstances of the Toogood family weigh heavily in favour of allowing them a settled base. The council have visited the site and could be satisfied it lends itself to be a small site of 2 family pitches. So it is at this point I request the committee take all matters into consideration endorsed by the planning officer's report and approve my client, Mr. Toogood, and his family's planning application approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and well timed. If you don't mind just switching your microphone off as you leave. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Right, well, before I begin debate amongst members, I'm going to bring the planning officer who presented, John Shaw, in, and then after him, I'm going to give Philip a moment to talk about anything that's been said, and then we will go to members. John.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll touch on a few points that were raised. I appreciate the visual impacts was referenced in terms of the built form in and around the sites. Officers are confident that for consideration of the visual impact, both landscape and also in terms of the character of that settlement has been fully considered. We are looking at 2 amenity blocks that are very, very small in scale, and 2 static caravans. There are a number of conditions that will be imposed to do with landscaping, to do with materials. The site, though central, does benefit from screening at the moment, and this will be improved as part of the condition that have been recommended. And overall, the scale is considered not sufficient to warrant concern of the impact on the non-designated heritage assets that the parish council and the first speaker referenced. In terms of the distance that the parish council mentions, a few miles from operating, yes, a couple of miles can be a long way for some people, but it is fully accepted within gypsy policy, gypsy travel policy, not nationally and locally, that gypsy travellers do not live within urban settlements. They live on the edge of or somewhat further removed, and that getting to facilities by car is absolutely fundamental to their way of life. So there's no expectation that this family would be walking to schools or medical facilities. So the fact that it's a 3-minute drive to Markbrain is considered a sustainable location. But we mentioned also about gypsy travel sites often isolated. This is not the case. This is not something that we encourage. They should be near to settlements, close to settlements, as the policy says. So we do not support gypsy travel sites that are literally in the middle of nowhere. That would be classed as unsustainable. So that's not something that we support. In terms of the point about the previous application being considered differently, is the fact that the policy CS12 and BPCS and the GTAA, which obviously was all in the detail in the report, does mean that planning officers and members have to consider gypsy travel sites through with different policies than if it was an open market dwelling. So we have been consistent with the policy framework nationally and as far as we're concerned. I think there's a few other points that have been made. I think I'd love to Philip to come on to those.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to comment on the first letter that was read out, which alleges that undue consideration has been given to policies CS6 and CS12. I can assure members the officers have given consideration to these policies and the character of the surrounding environment as well as the historic. And there are no landscape designations. The previous application was refused in relation to the principle of the site as put out by the parish chair. It's this application fully in compliance in officer's opinion with CS6 and CS12. An interesting point with regards impact. I see the quote in the officer's report for the second item that we're going to be discussing today in paragraph 6.26, which says any built development of a greenfield site changes its character and appearance and will result in the loss of agricultural land. Yes, that's the case here. However, it's to an acceptable level in consideration of the surrounding built environment in officer's opinion. I also members to refer to paragraphs 4.15 and 4.16 in the officer's report and the comments by the gypsy liaison officer and our planning policy team, who clearly support the application. Also, your highway officer response also raises no objections in relation to the surrounding road infrastructure. And in conclusion, overall, officers consider this a sustainable site for the development as proposed, and we consider it in accordance with the policies as set out in your report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll go into the member debate now. Gary Burchett has indicated I will bring officers in when members have finished, though, each time, just to clarify or pick up any points. Councillor Gary Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, clarification from the planning officer, if I may. This morning there was discussion over the footway on the lane up to the junction, and you weren't sure whether that was whether access was going to be on that footway or separate access onto the A road. You just confirm the footpath is definitely going to be on the site entrance to the corner.
Yeah, on the condition 4 and appendix 1, it makes clear that a footway connection between the site and the junction of A lane shall be submitted to and approved by the local land authority, and this needs to be implemented prior to occupation. I have discussed with the highways officer, who was insisting that the condition was required. I was informed with him. And our view is that it should be from the access on Hayward Lane, as opposed to on the opposite side on the A529, where drop-offs and pick-ups could be occurring, which is a solid white line, and there's obviously busy A roads. So that being said, will have to be submitted before the site is occupied. Officers will have that control, and obviously highways continue to consult at that point. But we accept that the access has to be improved for people to live on the site, both for the vehicle access, but also pedestrian access, and it will have to be done before the applicants can occupy the site.
Okay, and a question regarding the gypsy liaison officer. And to be honest with you, I'm quite concerned that we're giving weight to a family with particular family circumstances, as opposed to planning permission for a site for a family to live on. The fact that they look after the mother, the fact that they live on a hectic site and it was too hectic for them, they want a quiet site, should not be a planning consideration. The planning consideration should be whether or not we want this to be a gypsy traveller site, as opposed to a specific site particularly family. If I can't move out of my private rented house because the neighbours are noisy, I have to wait till I'm evicted from that house in order to get another house within Shropshire. So why is there more weight being given to a gypsy family? The fact that they want a quiet site as opposed to a hectic site in 4.15. They want to move out because the site is too hectic and too noisy for them. So can we have clarification on that, please?
This was touched on this morning, I believe. It's a situation where the site they're currently on is a personal permission to another gypsy family who are currently travelling. And therefore, when they return, they will be off out of that site. It's a material consideration in that there's a need for the gypsy site. The planning policy section indicates here support for it. We haven't got designated gypsy sites in Shropshire, and therefore we do rely heavier on sites like this one, where for a family site. Officers have considered it in relation to the relevant policies and maintain that it's fully supportive in relation to the relevant policies.
Okay. Is there just a comment on the difference between, say, Councillor Burchett and a gypsy traveller application in the way that they're handled?
Yeah, in terms of the personal circumstances of the applicants, in terms of the government's plan policy for traveller sites, that's PPTS, abbreviated in the report. Personal circumstances are material consideration for gypsy traveller sites. And CS12 again is a different policy in terms of where we would allow gypsy traveller sites in comparison to, say, an open market dwelling, which is why the previous application was refused. So I understand the concern that's been raised by the numerous objects that we've had about the seeming inconsistency, but I just would reiterate that the national policy, personal circumstances are material. They do not have a settled base that is permanently theirs at this moment in time. And therefore, there is a chance that if the travellers who are designated for the site that they're on at the moment returns, that they will be living a roadside existence for a period of time I could not specify. So that is not what policy wants to see us to achieve, particularly when we have young children, and that is a material consideration as well. So policy is different, and ultimately judgment had to be made on that policy basis.
I'd just like to add that is highlighted actually in paragraph 4.16 and the planning policy comments that I referred to earlier in italics at the bottom of the paragraph.
Okay, Councillor Street,
This is a clarification, really. I mean, I've seen enough caravan sites over the years come forward. If we're having a site previously, for various reasons, not just because of gypsy travel, we would put a timeline on it.
You mean that they will be limited how long you get to live there?
Yeah, which has happened many times.
Can I just before you come in, John, I think in the condition it does say that it's particular to this family and that should they vacate the site permanently, then it must be returned back to how it was.
Okay, there you go.
That's in the conditions. So you save your voice a little bit. Joyce.
Thank you. I have the very strong feeling of deja vu because we've had a few of these applications and they're always very, very difficult. I feel sorry for residents because they feel they're having something inflicted on them. I also feel sorry for the applicants because they obviously want somewhere stable to live. Unfortunately, policy doesn't favour the residents. It does favour the gypsies. So I'm finding this extremely difficult. I'm even thinking of abstaining because I don't think I can vote for it at the moment. I'll listen to what's said. And I don't feel I can vote against this because the residents have a strong point of view, as does the local member, and the family obviously are desperate to find somewhere to stay. So I shall leave it there and I shall listen to what's said and see if I am swayed at all.
Yeah. Before I bring in Roger will be next. We do find ourselves always, as you rightly said, in a difficult position on these applications, but to a degree, it's one of our own making. When we refresh SAMDEV, one of the requirements is that we put forward sites that, like these, that these families can live on. And whether it's prejudice or whether, for whatever reason, we don't bring those forward. So we end up with these attempts at windfall sites. So instead of considering where might be best and least harmful, we end up with these windfall applications coming in. We deal with them differently because the law requires us to. It's very difficult if you're prejudiced against to swim upstream when the rest of us can just float. Anyway, Roger. Oh, Joyce, sorry.
Sorry, no one's to come back. I am aware of everything you've said, but I do feel it's very difficult for us as committee members because I know very well, and I suspect everybody else on this committee knows very well, if it goes to appeal and we refuse it, we will lose it. So we're between a rock and a hard place, and I often wonder why these actually come to committee, to be honest with you, because there is no choice. Thank you.
Anything you want to say, or can I bring in Roger Evans, then Julian Dean, and then Colin Taylor?
It's just it was an interesting point you raised about the appeal situation, but we'll listen to what the other members will say first, please.
Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I say, to start with, one of the conversations contained phrases I would not expect to hear here. And I note your comments and I echo those entirely. They do not be part of the planning process and should not have been uttered. It is a pity that they are. However, I've listened to it, I've read the reports, and I am aware that Shropshire Council has failed over a number of years to have sufficient sites designated for this category of person. And it is a category of person, and they are entitled to live in our communities. And I've listened to the officers, and it's all, to me, as I understand it, as being policy compliant. So therefore, they do not fall, because of government legislation, they do not fall under the normal criteria that would be offered, where housing can't be in open countryside, it's only in designated space, where as long as it's near a community and in an appropriate area, they can get planning permission. And yeah, I've listened to it, and I've listened to the community, and I've tried to go with the communities, but I'm sorry, if we're going to stay policy compliant, we have to give this planning permission. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm looking at it purely in planning policy terms, and that's where we are.
Thank you, Roger. Julian, Councillor Julian Dean.
Thank you very much. I too wanted to actually thank the chair for calling out that comment and asking to disregard it. I thought that was really quite offensive to talk about dumping a site on people. She would never use that term about any other sites. It was quite poorly, frankly. I also took into account, actually, with interest, the fact that we are struggling with the insufficiency of sites, and that we are actually being challenged on that. I do think that's a significant thing. And finally, haven't actually heard anything which suggests that this application is not in line with our policy. But I've heard some suggestions of that, but I'm reassured by officers that the application is in line with policy. So I too will be supporting this application.
Okay, is that a proposal or?
Yeah, okay, happy to propose, yeah.
Right. That's Colin Taylor. Do you want to come back into it?
No, I'm fine, thank you very much.
Like a greyhound at the gate.
Yes, I'm waiting to hear what the has to say.
That's the Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd also echo the comments made about.
Yeah, I think we've got that message now.
Gone through that. Councillor Barrow says about deja vu, and this is almost deja vu for an application that came in from Alveley, my ward, some few years back. It's almost an identical layout, junction of roads surrounded by other properties, etc. One of the properties is a residential care home. right across the lane, there was 2 or 3 settled farmers' bungalows, etc. So it was smack bang in the middle of a small settlement called Fen Green. As you know, Chairman, I'm a sort of very late substitute stand-in, so I've had to race through this report as quickly as I can. Taken on note and taken on board the comments that have been made about not enough sites being provided for gypsies and travellers. That was the case when this one was put in at Alveley all those years ago, and the council hasn't moved forward an inch by the look of it on that. This particular family were given 2 temporary permissions. And eventually, at the 3rd time, because still nothing had been provided by the council, they were granted permission. Now, all that said, and taken on board comments that have been listed about noise and disturbance, unsuitable for needs, etc., etc. It's just the same rehearsal as what we had for Fen Green in Alveley. If it's any reassurance to any of the people from the parishes and everything around, now, 3 and a bit years on, since it was all established, you wouldn't even know they were there. The hedges have grown around, but they have complied to absolutely everything that was asked, and I see all the conditions written here that they had to apply to. They've complied to the law and the letter and everything. You wouldn't even know it was there. They fitted into the community so that they had to put up initially with all the usual comments that you get associated with these sort of. They even go out and clean the local roads so that nothing can be said. Look at the mess down by that traveller side. Nothing. And if these people are like that, then I can assure the residents of Woodseaves and wherever, there won't be, in 2 or 3 years, you won't have a problem at all. I shall support this, Chairman.
Just for clarification, I'm sure Philip will correct me if I'm wrong. The provision of council sites is about where it should be. It is these sort of windfall sites for single family living, and it's very easy to quickly jump to blame the council. However, when SAMDEV is refreshed, it is down to individual members and parish councils to put forward said sites. So in a way, it's kind of us that is not putting these sites forward for the wrong reasons. It's not because the council hasn't identified them. Philip, is that correct?
Yes, 2 things I'd like to add to that. I refer you to paragraph 6.117 in the officer's report. And also a material consideration is the NPPF. Officers consider this site is fully compliant with that policy, which is national policy, of course. I believe Councillor Barrow wanted to speak before I conclude.
She wasn't sure. She wanted to listen to the debate.
He did see my hand up and you didn't.
All right.
A few minutes ago. I wanted to ask a question actually. How
can you use your speaker, please?
Sorry, yeah.
That's all right.
How hard are we trying to get sites? Do we actually write to the parish councils and ask them to identify sites? Because I've not seen anything at my parish council. I'm just wondering how hard we are trying to find sites.
Well, I'm not fully up to speed. However, I am aware with the revised local plan that's going through now, one of the issues raised by the inspectors was gypsy site provision. But I cannot speculate on what was said, but it was a concern raised.
Thank you very much.
It could possibly be something Scrooge could be interested in having a look at. But there we go. Far be it from me to suggest this. Right, I haven't got any other hands. I've had a proposal which has not yet been seconded. It's now been seconded by Councillor Roger Evans that we accept the officer's recommendation, taking on board the standard conditions and the extra conditions, which I'm sure you've all read and understand. So we will move to a vote, and I will ask the solicitor, as we have started to do while these are being live streamed, to read out the names for members to say how they would like to vote. James.
Thank you, Chair. Just going through members alphabetically. Councillor Joyce Barrow.
Abstain.
Councillor Gary Burchett.
Abstain.
Councillor Steve Charnley.
Support.
Councillor Steve Davenport.
Support.
Councillor Roger Evans.
Support.
Councillor Ted Clark.
Support.
Councillor Julian Dean.
Support.
Yourself, Chair.
For.
And Councillor Colin Taylor.
Support.
Just put them.
7, 4 and 2 abstention. Okay, so that's passed. We will move on to the next application. Anybody who's outside the room that needs to be fetched back in, if somebody would just stick their head out and Labrador like fetch them back in, I would be very grateful. Oh, there we go. Forgotten about that door. I call it the escape exit, Roger. One table leg.
You want to do this as well?
Moving on, members. Item 6 is the proposed affordable housing exception site west of Merrington Road in Bowmere Heath, Shropshire. And is it you doing this one, Philip?
No, Jane.
Jane, of course it's you, Jane. You were there this morning.
Yes, she was indeed.
Yes, Jane. Welcome.
This application is the erection of 19 affordable dwellings as a rural exception site. It includes vehicular access off Merrington Road, retention of the existing pedestrian access and provision of open space. The proposal was originally for 20 dwellings and amendments have been received that include a reduction to 19, setting back the house on plot 15 further from the boundary to the south, an increase in open space provision, retention of the permissive access to the public rights of way in the adjacent field, and rounding off the corner of the development. Members made a site visit to the site earlier this morning. You move to through the slides.
Which one?
The site layout. This slide shows a site layout with two one-bedroom bungalows facing the road to the front. And the remainder of the development is a mix of 12 two-bedroom houses and 3 three-bedroom houses and 2 one-bedroom flats. The houses on the plots closest to the existing houses in Percy Thrower Avenue, which is plots 15 and 16, are set further back from the boundary than originally proposed and have no windows in their side elevation. Go through the different slides of the house types. That's the bungalow. Yeah. I think it's these next couple. You can see this side elevation at the bottom there, and there that face the houses to the south. So there is a condition recommended that no windows can be added. So the proposal is overlooking. The next slides are photos taken of the site approaching from the north. Go to the photos. I think it's that one of the slides. You can see that there is a bus stop, and it was queried with members on site today about the bus stop. That is going to be retained within the new footpath where the access comes out onto Merrington Road. The footpath will follow the access road.
Have you got a bus?
And pardon?
Have you got a bus?
Steve, please don't let Jane finish.
I'd just like to add to that. We met it as Queen's.
However, the same as I've just said to Councillor Davenport, you please can we listen to Jane's presentation? Thank you.
So yeah, the existing bus stop is just a bit of tarmac area that's quite recent addition actually, I believe. And the access is this side of it and will provide a footpath from the access road to join up with the bus stop that will be provided within the footpath. The later slides are pictures of the existing houses that face onto the field at the moment. That's in the corner of the field. You can just about see it there, is where the existing pedestrian access is into the field. The right of way further across in the field, and it's just a permissive right of way, so they're going to maintain the access. The recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions as set out in Appendix 1, and any amendments to these conditions as considered necessary, and the signing of a Section 106 agreement to secure all of the houses as affordable housing. In addition, before the decision can be issued, a countersigned impact assessment and conservation payment certificate is also required that confirms acceptance into Natural England's district level licensing scheme. The provisional certificate has already been provided, but the fee is required to be paid before the countersigned certificate can be issued. And I have just received an email while we've been here, actually, that they have actually paid that now, and the certificate is about to be issued shortly. So if the application is supported by members today, it can't be issued until the Section 106 agreement has been completed and signed to secure affordable housing. Okay.
Yep. Okay, we have just one speaker speaking against this proposed affordable housing exception site. That is Councillor Dan Harmer, the chair of the Foregate Heath Parish Council. Councillor Dan Harmer. Again, you have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. Would you like to monitor yourself, or do you want me to give you a 30-second?
I'll try and self-monitor.
Okay. I'll only stop you when you run out of time.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate you hearing me today, so thank you very much. I'm here to represent the depth of feeling from both the parish council and more so the residents. The residents, by way of 68 objections, have displayed a very strong negative reaction to this proposal, and the feeling from the locals in Beaumont Heath that our development boundaries seem not to be worth the red ink that they're marked up in. Beaumont Heath will have had 3 exception sites in the last 10 years, should this get approval, questioning the word exception. The feeling in the community is that a specific landowner seems to be manipulating parish boundaries for developments under 100% affordable housing. And at the same time, also offering land to developers within our boundary. In addition, without taking into consideration any enhancements to the community developments. I noted that government guidance on the advice on planning for housing needs in different groups from 2019 and 2021 state in paragraph 14 that rural exception sites are encouraged to take a proactive approach in identifying suitable locations for the rural exception site delivery through measures such as, and I'm limiting it to one bullet point, working and collaborating with local communities and parish councils and other relevant groups. And paragraph 15, that developers may wish to consider establishing strengthening working relationships with relevant groups, including parish and town councils. Commitments are required for effective rural exception site delivery. The way in which this particular application has been approached is felt by the parish councillors to be wholly unacceptable due to the total lack of communication and very closed nature of the application. In my personal opinion, the lack of engagement from this quite controversial proposal has led to a very fractious response from the community, and engagement probably would have answered some more of those questions. The parish council acknowledged the latest revision G, and that the layout has been reduced in number and there's an element of reorientation. However, there is still close proximity to the houses you can see on the screen there to the south of the page to the existing dwellings. And as you can see now, they've moved the leap to the north, but they've omitted one of the houses to the north rather than rejigging it, moving it away from Percy Thrower. The development has clearly not followed this guidance. As mentioned with this exception site. The villagers in Beaumont Heath and the parish council do not support this development in its current form. I think that covered everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Well self-monitored. If you'd like to turn it off before you leave. Very good. Officers?
I can just do a little. Oops. It was mentioned about the exception sites being outside the development boundary, but that is where they have to be. That's what the exception policy says, that they're adjacent to a settlement boundary. That if it was a site within the settlement boundary, it would be open market housing with the usual percentage of affordable housing. So they are an exception to policy, but they can't be located away from the settlement boundary because that would put them further out into the countryside. So wherever you put them, they are always going to be adjacent to existing housing. And unfortunately, people that live on the current edge of the settlement do object because they don't want housing beyond where they already live and the views that they benefit from of the open fields beyond. So it is a particular issue with all the exception sites. They have to be outside the development boundary and on the edge of the settlement, adjacent to existing housing. It's unfortunate that perhaps there's not discussions with the parish about a suitable location before the application's put in, but they don't have to have that conversation. I agree it would be helpful. In terms of the revised plan that we received, they put the equipped play area in the top corner because you wouldn't want that next to the existing housing because, as you know, children in a play area make quite a lot of noise, and I don't think you'd welcome a play area at the bottom of your garden. So it's felt that residential gardens or putting existing residential gardens is more appropriate than putting the play space, the equipped play area next to the existing houses. I think that's covered a few of the issues that were raised.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. There clearly is a demonstrated need for affordable housing here, as clearly set out in paragraph 4.11 of the officer's report. If there wasn't a need, well then clearly the officers wouldn't be supporting the application. And Whistle, it's not mandatory for community engagement and on an application. Officers on this council do support pre-application and encourage all developers to engage with local communities on applications, and that is set out in the NPPF, but it's advisory. I also noticed in the officer's report, it refers to distances from existing dwellings, and the distances quoted are considered by officers to be acceptable in relation to residential privacy and amenity. And as such, officers concluded that this application should gain support. Thank you.
Okay, I've thus far got Councillor Steve Davenport and then Councillor Gary Burchett. Steve.
Approve it.
Well, can you turn your microphone on and do it properly then, please?
I would just like to approve it.
Still want your microphone on, please, because there are people at home listening.
Okay. I would just like to approve it. I'd still like to approve it.
Right. So you are moving that we go with the yes. All right. However, before we move on with that, I've got Councillor Gary Burchett, then Councillor Julian Dean. Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm minded to support it. So I know the clarification couple of points. So it's 19 affordable dwellings to back up the social housing market. Why are we not putting in consideration for some shared ownership properties within that 19 to allow people to take some ownership of their own properties?
I think there is a mix, actually.
It just is affordable.
Well,
yeah,
so that's 40% ownership is affordable.
Yeah, affordable comprises social rent, affordable rent, shared
market,
ownership, discounted sale, affordable as a whole.
He's two local connections.
The applicants are not a housing provider. Sorry,
not a social housing provider.
They're not a social housing provider, and therefore the Section 106 will ensure that the houses are retained for people that qualify for affordable need in perpetuity.
Okay.
And there are shared ownership is where they own a share in the house, but they don't own it outright.
And the reason why in the report then it's for 2 ties to Bomber Heath to be able to get.
Yes.
Yeah.
This affordable housing site is purely for residents who have a need to live in Boney Heath, whereas there is a current application undetermined for 60 odd houses in south of Boney Heath, of which 20%, 12 are going to be affordable, but they will be for the wider parish and not just the village in Boney Heath. And there is a need for both the 19 on this side and the 12 on the other side.
And actually, one more, just on the plan, just thinking about the residents' objections.
Yeah.
Why didn't somebody think about putting the attenuation pond along the bottom triangle of the plan and pushing that left or right hand house there up to where the attenuation pond is, to take that house away from being next to the house?
There are houses all along that boundary. You can't quite see them in that plan. So there is a house.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the attenuation pond coming a long skinny pond as opposed to
I see.
I did notice when we did the site visit that there was a number of sedge grasses growing out. I suspect the attenuation pond's there to dry those up a bit and have the water sitting where the water sits in the winter already.
So,
but I don't know.
I'll second it also. That doesn't matter to me.
Right, so you're seconding then.
Yeah.
All right. I do have some other speakers. We will listen to what everybody has to say. I've got Councillors Julian Dean, then Councillor Steve Charmley, then Councillor Nat Green, and then Ted Clark. Julian.
Thank you. First of all, apologies that I couldn't attend the visit this morning. So a couple of questions. Firstly, at point 16 in the report, it talks about the requirement for a landscape management plan. I'm just curious as to whether that will involve a private management company, or if that open space is going to be adopted by the council, and whether that is something we can consider from a planning point of view, just aware of issues with that.
Most open spaces now are not adopted either by Shropshire Council or town councils or parish councils. They're not willing to take them on anymore. So there is a condition recommended that says they have to provide a management plan to us for approval that shows the legal and financial means by which the open space will be transferred to a management company to manage and maintain in perpetuity. There's also a condition about the specification for the play equipment. The play area has to be approved, and also a management plan for how that equipment will be managed and maintained. Yeah.
And housing association.
Well, yes, once this is transferred to a registered provider, they usually will take it on themselves. It's private open market housing that we have this problem with open space, and they go to management companies, and then the owners of the private housing have to pay a management fee. But because this is 100% affordable housing scheme, residents won't be paying a management fee.
Thank you for that. And then the second question, which I asked last time, and I'm going to ask it again until I start getting answers about it, which is that we passed policy recently that with larger developments, including 19 homes, it's a large development, because we would query with Severn Water where the sewage is going and if they have sufficient capacity to deal with it, whilst recognising that we have to assume that they are going to have adequate connections. So have we made those inquiries?
Severn themselves haven't been consulted on the application, but our drainage team is satisfied with the proposed with the drainage.
Yeah. So that's a repeat point. Yeah. That is the council policy.
Yes, I am aware. You brought this up at the meeting last month, Councillor. Yes, I've been speaking to the assistant director on this matter. It's a difficult situation. We are looking into it, I can assure you. We have sought legal advice on the situation, but the problem we've got as well, Severn Trent have standing advice, and we need to be, we're seeking legal advice on where we stand with this. I do apologise that this matter hadn't been looked at earlier, but we appreciate what the council concluded with regards comments to Severn Trent in consultations, but it's not quite that straightforward, because Severn Trent, like I said, have got standing advice, and we do need to liaise with them. But I can assure you, we are looking into it.
Thank you. I look forward to further details.
Councillor Steve Charmley.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I do feel for both council. If you've got developers who aren't willing to engage with you, it is really unfortunate. And we would all want developers to engage at the earliest possible opportunity to create headaches like we've got at the moment. I was actually going to second it, but that's been gone. Having visited the site this morning, it looks a good site despite the fact that local residents in relatively new houses are keen to keep their view of green fields, but it is what it is, and I would support it.
Yeah, Councillor Macri.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm also minded to support this. I think all in all, this is looking like a good site. The one point of clarification I would like is whether the balancing pond it has been added into the amenity space or not. As this is a common bugbear of these developments.
The calculation of the open space provision does not include the area occupied by the balancing pond, but these are meant to work that they are dry for most of the time anyway, and they do provide visual enhancement as well, having that pond within the wider open space. It provides for a larger area of open space than is required.
I appreciate that, but just as a point, is you wouldn't necessarily want your children playing in balancing.
No, but it does provide for a bigger area than is necessary, so it's not included in the open space calculation.
Yeah. Councillor Ted Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I regret I wasn't able to attend the site this morning and give my apology. I've caught something a little peculiar. This is just a comment on the application. I do generally, I'm minded to support it as well. I've just become more than a little depressed, really, with the way things are going present days when we talk about bungalows with one bed. I do think sadly that seems to be the way that we're quietly progressing, but it doesn't future-proof that dwelling for the resident, perhaps requiring a carer or whatever in the future, or just for overnight visit. So it's just I hope it's not seen as pious, but I do find that very depressing that we get into something like that. Okay, I think 2 beds should be the minimum.
Disagree, but the 1 bed is easier to heat and more affordable at the point of sale. So,
well,
partial sale, rent.
2 beds at the evening. Yeah. Thank you.
Point taken. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm minded to support it. I do note the comments made by the parish council about not having any engagement, followed by no engagement, followed by no engagement. I would hope that officers encourage pre-application advice to be shared with the parish council as a default, and therefore the applicant has got to choose not to share the information rather than seek their permission to share the information, because the earlier the parish councils are aware of any applications coming forward, the more input they may have, whether the developer wishes to or not. But I do know that, unfortunately, as I say, I should be supporting it, but I do, as a parish councillor myself, I think all developers should talk with the community where they want their houses to be placed. Thank you, Chairman.
Roger, I don't think you would find a single person, officer or member around this table that would disagree with that. However, it is not an absolute requirement. It is something that is suggested that would be helpful, and I'm sure our officers do encourage, as they indeed said during the presentation, Philip said afterwards, they do encourage developers to do some form of consultation with the local community. But your points are noted, but I can assure you they are almost certainly shared by all of us. Okay. I have had a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation. I have had what choice?
I think I'm waiting to vote.
Oh, right, okay. Well, it's this region A, but you've got to let me finish first, though, that's all right. You'll get home more quickly if we don't have this discussion between before votes. So it has been proposed and it has been seconded that we accept the officer's recommendation on this. The point about for any developers that may or may not be in the room about speaking with the local community has been taken on board, although you don't have to do it. It would be nice if you did. So over to James to read out the names.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barron.
For.
Councillor Duchett.
Approved.
Councillor Charnley.
For.
Councillor Davenport.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Green.
For.
Yourself, Chair.
For.
And Councillor Taylor, please.
For.
Unanimous again.
Thank you. You all heard that, don't need to repeat it. Thank you very much, members. Thank you to our one and only speaker, Councillor Hammer. And we will move on to the final applications.
Mr. Chairman, can I just seek advice of the solicitor? I design all the leaflets. I'm the agent for the Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury. And I design all the leaflets, and I've designed all the leaflets with regards to the shopping centre, the fact that he's 100% for it. Do I need to leave the room? Is that predetermined?
You're asking him what you thought of the leaflets?
I'm asking the fact that I designed them and the fact that I'm the agent and I'm named on the documents. Do I need to leave the room?
No.
Chair, could I suggest that perhaps in his capacity as supporting the sitting MP, perhaps he might leave the country?
Well, Mr. Clark, if we be constipated.
Yeah, perhaps you can go and stay at one of Tony's mansions in Egypt or something. Eh?
Yeah.
And there we go. Let's not make this political tale.
No, I wouldn't.
No. Okay, item 7 is the Riverside Shopping Centre Prize Bill, Shrewsbury. This is for the demolition works. Philip, is it you? John. John. Over to John.
Thank
Then
you, Chair.
Philip, and then us.
Yeah, as you say, it's the demolition of the Riverside Shopping Centre and related activity, enabling works including boundary wall, and also the formation of a new public park.
People coming in. Carry on.
Yeah, before going to the details of the slides, I will first refer members to the update sheet. You will note that a further response from the Environment Agency has been received, which has been summarised. Responsive officers is provided. Following on from the EA's response, 2 further conditions would now be added to any final decision notice, which are listed on the update sheet. One of which requires that flood risk assessments to be submitted to the LPA for any other development outside of the park commences, to demonstrate that there is no loss of storage and there is an overall reduction in flood risk. A further condition requires details of drainage systems for the infiltration of surface water to be submitted to prevent water pollution. Also on the update sheet, you will notice that conditions 4 and 8 in the appendix that you've seen with the original report is now being proposed to be split into pre-demolition conditions and pre-construction conditions. The applicant suggested that this split occur to mirror the works contracts. The conditions will provide the LP with the same level of control, and the relevant consultees have been consulted and have agreed to the changes. Final verbal update is that the applicants today submitted a revised flood risk assessment. These are incorporate minor changes, which merely seek to clarify matters of confusion raised by the EA. There is no need to make any further changes to the following report or to the recommended conditions as a result of this deleted document. The application is at committee today, as this application does not meet the criteria for delegated decisions as set out in the council's adopted scheme of delegation, given the application has been submitted by Traffic Council to itself, which also acts as the local planning authority. I shall briefly summarise the context of the site now and why officers are recommending the application for approval. So the first slide, this shows you the site plan. The Hatchling Rail again. That incorporates the Riverside Shopping Centre. It also incorporates the bridge across the Pratt Hill Shopping Centre to the southeast and a bridge across to the River Meadows car park. to the corner, the junction of Rouse Hill and Smithfield, the medical centre, and also on Raven Meadows itself is the former police station. I would say that the medical centre and police station have already been approved for demolition, and those permissions are still extant. Obviously, the bulk of the site we're looking at today is the Riverside Shopping Centre, which is now closed to the public. I'm sure most members are familiar with the site, but I'll give a very brief summary, as is also in the planning report, about the context of the site. It's bound to the River Severn, which is to the north there. The Darwin Shopping Centre, which is to the bottom right, that large monolith. And the Pratt Hill Shopping Centre to the southeast. Between these two shopping centres is the Gap site, which is that white area there, Philip's highlighted. And to the rear of the Gap site is a length of medieval town wall and is a scheduled monument. The application site itself extends to 1.2 hectares, is within the Shrewsbury conservation area, and is within the flood zone M3. As I say, the shopping centre is now vacant and has been closed to the public. I'll go through the slide for. So yeah, just following on from that description of the site, here's photographs for context. Top left is the corner of the junction of Smithfield and Rouse Hill, which is and you can see the medical centre and also the stairs there that take you up to the footbridge, which is on the right. Bottom left is the corner footbridge looking down to the frontage of the site adjacent to the primary inn. And then on the opposite side is another entrance which is being closed, as you can clearly see there. This one. So this is a demolition plan. I would hide the fact that conditions would be imposed, so that final details of demolition to cover noise management, air pollution, vehicle movements, handling of waste to recover and reuse materials, and ecological protection will all be will have to be discharged by the applicants. This shows you the post demolition plan. The black line is indicating the hoarding that will be put around the site. The condition 16 on Appendix 1 in the part of the original report just state, I'll just go back to that one. No, go back to where it was. Just say that the final details of the hoarding will have to be submitted to the local planning authority confirmation. Clearly, there's going to be some visual impact in the interim of hoarding around the site once the Riverside and the other associated buildings are demolished. So once the demolition takes place, the proposal we're looking at now is the provision of a new public park. This is so the site plan layout of the park that is being proposed. I give a brief summary of the park. So it's been split into 4 character areas. So the left of that picture would be a play area. That will be designed to be robust features, conscious that this site floods. So it will be something that will have to be easy to clean. The developers are looking at using of local stone for climbing and so forth. So it wouldn't be a conventional play area, but it would be one nonetheless. And the middle zone, if you like, would be a garden area, and then the one next to that would be the lawn where events could take place. And then the final area on the boundary with the main road there would be a wet woodland. Next one, please. So this is a more zoomed in view of, if you like, of the So this shows the events lawn, the amphitheatre, which is where Philip's highlighting the case now, and then the podium, which is at the top level. And on the podium level, you would have meanwhile uses. So these would be like pop-up stalls and whatnot to activate the space in the interim. And next one, please. And these are sectional drawings, so you can see Rouse Hill will be where the car is, and then you've got the footpath, and then the tree lines, landscaping, and then you go into the events area, and then up the steps to the podium, and eventually up the steps to the existing Foregate footbridge. Next one, Bob. Yeah, so this is a more clear image. So you can see the steps up to the footbridge. You can see the brick-clad lift shafts on the top right there, and then you see a folly gateway wall, which will be an interesting visual feature as part of the park. Next one. And this is a 3D visual. So this is showing you the folly wall, the arched wall there, lift shafts, the open lawn, and then the steps where it's been described as an amphitheatre where people sit, have views of the river, have views of the Welsh Bridge, have views of any events that are taking place in the parkland itself. So this is not a final plan, but this is just showing you how this park would relate to the overall master plan vision, if you like. Now, in the application report, the time frame for the master plan is detailed. So the park is obviously the proposed area, and then with future subsequent applications, the area on the podium there in white, there will be the construction of buildings which are still to be finalised, but the council are expecting an application 2, if you like, if we consider this application 1, an application 2 to come forward in the next few weeks. That is coming out for public consultation. But yeah, this is the wider master plan. I would reiterate, we are looking today at the demolition and the park, but it is important for members to know that the wider vision of how this park relates to the overall site. So you've got the park on the left, and then you've got these 3 blocks, which say the final uses are still being considered, but there's consideration of a multi-agency hub, office, residential. To the southeast is the Pride Hill, which will be application 3, which will be subject to a redevelopment. And here you're looking at, again, cinema, hotel, and so forth. So there, that's sort of the overview of the proposal. I don't want to repeat the contents of the report, which you've all got access to. But in terms of the master plan, the application today is for demolition and creation of the park. So this element does form an integral part of the illustrative master plan, which will direct applications 2, 3, and 4. Council have received 11 lot funding, and it's been considered that a phased approach, as they are proposing, would be the best way to de-risk the site and prove its viability and suitability for mixed-use developments. This is why we have application 1 today, as opposed to one grand application in one go. The LUF funding is subject to compliance with the completion of demolition and enabling works for the Riverside Centre by March 2025. So it's quite a challenging time frame to have the application come in, have approval, go ahead with the works. So as a recap, overall, the benefits of the proposed application consider significant. We bring forward high quality, accessible public zone that will enhance the landscaping and biodiversity of the town centre and the setting of nearby heritage assets. The current application will not exacerbate flood risk at the site. The report does go into detail to do with mitigating the noise impact, the flood risk, heritage considerations. Again, I'm not going to repeat all of that. So to conclude, the principle of development and the phased approach is deemed in accordance with the illustrative master plan. So that approach is accepted. The development has the potential to positively contribute to the delivery of wider investments, regeneration, and town management strategies. It is acknowledged that there was previous history of the site was for a retail development. That application lapsed. Policy has significantly moved forward since then, and it is considered in terms of balance. This will comply with key aims of policy CS12 and CS15, as well as the aims of the Big Town Plan, the Smithfield Riverside Strategic Development Framework, the relevant policies of the Emerging Local Plan and the NPPF, with a focus on the reuse of brownfield land. So overall, it is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1. The new conditions stated on the update sheet and any amendments to these conditions as considered necessary by the head of service. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. You did indicate you wanted just to sum up. I think
No, there was just a couple of small issues. First of all, the recommendation, as members will notice, delegated the head of service, as John has just read out, subject to conditions as set out in Appendix 1, and any amendments to these conditions as considered necessary by the head of service. I'm sure I don't need to remind members of the sensitivity of this site, adjacent as it is to River Severn, and what happens to Smithfield Road in the event of flooding. That has resulted in a lot of discussions with the Environment Agency, and so we wanted to keep the flexibility of making slight amendments if necessary to any of the conditions as set out by John, as we only yesterday actually had a meeting with the emergency planners, which actually proved to be very useful. So I think it's in our interest to have that flexibility, hence the reason for the recommendation. And second thing, minor issue John touched on, was lapsed planning permission. That was the reason the application has been advertised as a departure to the local plan, because the riverside shopping in the Samdale policy does indicate it to be replaced with a new shopping centre and a department store. So I think that's telling you how our plan is in need of an update, because we do consider this fully compliant with the upcoming local plan, even though it hasn't got much weight at this stage. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're very welcome. I think the world has changed a bit since the original one was put together. Just from my perspective, before we enter into debate, I do note the town council are very supportive of this, providing the litter bins get used elsewhere, which is good, as is the Civic Society, with a few caveats on Civil War bits. I would remind members, though, that whilst John in his presentation touched on phases 2 and 3, we are not here to consider those. We are here to consider getting rid of this and putting the park in, and I completely support the request to allow that to be a little bit organic. When you put something up, you follow plans. When you take something down, you sometimes have to change things a bit depending on what falls down where and everything else. So, okay, I've had Steve Chartley indicate thus far.
Chair, I have to speak before I leave.
Oh yes, yeah, no, you are. Yes, I do apologise. You're sat down there next to the screen, and I completely forgot you now.
Thank you, Chair.
Help yourself.
Yes, I think one thing you do have to remember in all of the controversies about the shopping centres is that the riverside is owned by Shropshire Council and always has been. And so whatever other arguments you may have, and you have to remember we have to deal with this site. I have to say I've been, because I've also been on the engagement groups and as part of the engagement groups and in other capacities in the town council. I think this is a good scheme, and particularly as far as the first phase, which is the garden, which allows for flood attenuation as well. I think it's imaginative and a very sensible way to go, and I therefore would strongly recommend that the committee goes with this. Having said that, having read through the report, I'm also minded to support what the Civic Society has said, which is that they would like to ensure that any archaeological works, are done thoroughly, because I think, as they say, there could be some very interesting archaeology under there, which in the long run could be of benefit to the town. But as I say, please support this. At least this initial phase, and hopefully we can make Shrewsbury a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe you are now leaving now.
I am.
Meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance on the site visit this morning. It was much appreciated. Okay, I've got Steve Charmley, and then Joyce Barrow, and then Julian Dean, and then Gary Birch.
Thank you.
I'll write those down before I forget.
Thank you, Chair. It's just very pleased to see this start coming forward at last. I think it was about 5 years ago promoting this site in the south of France at the Cannes Economic Festival when I had the portfolio, and it's been a long journey since. I kind of thank John for his comprehensive introduction. I thought it was going to be another 5 years, but there was a lot to go through. It looks like a great scheme now to kick the site off. and I would just fully support it and happy to move it.
Good. Okay, Joyce, then Gary Burchett, then Julian Dean, and then Roger.
I'd just like to know about the archaeological part of it. If we could bring in Dr. Andy Wigley, I'd be grateful, because I'd like to know what you anticipate finding and how you're going to deal with the site.
Yeah, Andy. Yeah, if I could come in there, please, Chair.
Yeah, you may.
So the Civic Society are highlighting the potential presence, and I say potential presence of the civil or line of the Civil War defences to Shrewsbury, which were built in the 1640s to re-fortify the town because medieval defences had been compromised at that point. They were observed in 1987 when the Riverside Medical Practice building was built on the corner of Rouse and Smithfield Road, and at that point they were present at about a depth of 1.25 metres below the existing ground surface. There was some archaeological recording done at the time, but it wasn't to a modern standard because archaeology wasn't a consideration in the planning process at that point. So the record that was made of those wasn't necessarily to the standard we would expect to see today, but it was the best that could be achieved in the circumstances that existed at the time. In the report that was produced, though, it notes that they were further reduced to facilitate, after the recording was done, to facilitate the construction of the medical practice building. So at this stage, we don't know to what extent they survive in that part of the site, and obviously the site is heavily constrained at present because of the presence of those standing buildings, and we're not going to get an opportunity to see or look at any survival of those defences until such time as the demolition proceeds. So we are in negotiations with the applicant team and their archaeological consultants to ensure that we do have adequate provision for full archaeological investigation of those defences. That's a technical exercise. It needs to be phased into the demolition programme because it's quite logistically difficult to sequence that in correctly. And obviously, there's going to need to be close cooperation between the archaeological contractors and demolition contractors to enable that to happen. There is provision now being made for to allow adequate access to be gained to those, and we're anticipating they're going to be at some depth on the site, and then therefore to assess the degree of survival, the depth at which they survive, and subsequently their significance thereafter. So we are accommodating that civic society requirement in that sense, and believe the officer, the recommended condition provides adequate provision to enable that to be fully secured. And there will be a wider assessment across the rest of the site as well, because there is some potential elsewhere, but the highest potential or interest is for the Civil War defences.
Will that cause much of a delay to it happening, or
it will be fully sequenced into the demolition? So there will be flexibility to enable the archaeologists to access the site and carry out their investigation at appropriate time and working in full cooperation with demolition contractors, so it shouldn't cause any unnecessary delay. Julian?
Thank you. My first comment is just with regard to the very late nature of the agreements with the Environment Agency, which is just a bit of a concern. Given some of the history around that, but it's good to see that in the papers that we've received today, there has been, we seem to have reached agreement, and particularly I want to draw attention, because it came up at a meeting of residents recently around flooding, I want to draw attention to the fact that there's a commitment that actually the result of this application will actually be to increase the water retention aspects of the site, and that there's a commitment that future phasing will at least protect the current situation in terms of the ability of that area to act as a floodplain, and so will not result in worse flooding downstream for some residents, which has been a concern from some people that have been raised. So I'm pleased to see that. I also can't help but comment on the phasing, which seems very sensible. The fact that we have a recognition of the uncertainty around funding, and that we're de-risking, as you said, the future phases by doing it this way makes a lot of sense. And it's a shame that the council didn't take the same approach to the 17 million they've just thrown at the Northwest Road before they've got a full business case.
Can we just concentrate on this one, please, Julian, if that's all right? Thank you. I don't think you require a response to those, do you? That was more of a soapbox statement. Short one, though. Yeah, thanks for that. It saves me intervening. Gary.
Thanks, Jim. Just a couple of points of clarification, if you don't mind. Revsill, will that remain one way to traffic heading up towards Red Meadows? And second of all, I know it's a lift shaft in the proposals. Currently, Frankwell Bridge is disabled access both directions, or not good disabled access, but disabled access nonetheless. If we put a lift in one end to make it easier, how are we going to lift in the other end? Get them off the bridge.
Yes, in terms of the footbridge, I know there's discussion still being undertaken about how to improve that. The red line does not incorporate that bridge and does not incorporate the other sides. So that's outside of the remit of this application. Yeah. I take your point though, when obviously there's going to be a clear improvement on this side, on the development sides, by having a 24-hour lift access across all levels, the plinth or podium level, and down into the ground floor level as well. And then, because the accessibility at the moment across that bridge is not good for people with disabilities. So I can only comment on the application as it is at the moment. We consider it as an improvement. I'm sorry, the first point you made.
First one was the traffic and Revsill.
Yeah, again, that's outside the red line. As part of the wider master plan, if you go back to the later slides, Philip, I want to briefly touch on this. Master plan slides. Last slides. Part of the wider master plan. The vision is to put a new avenue between where the Premier Inn is and the Raven Meadows car park and this application site, and that would allow say this level describing buses and other CFS vehicles to come up there. That would allow also to be less intensively used. At that point, maybe change are made, but in terms of the Revsill as it is at the moment, there's no proposal to change that road.
Good. I think access to lifts and compliance with the handicap laws are in the interest of the applicant to ensure that they comply with. And as Shropshire Council as the applicant, I wouldn't quite take it as read, but I think everything that's a vision of trouble there. So, yes. Okay, Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. One or two broadly supportive. One or two questions. In 1.1, there's a phrase there. Meanwhile, uses refer to short-term uses that take place while the site is underutilised or under construction. Wonder what that actually means, that when the demolition is done, does that mean that other uses could be found for that site or used pending the resolution of further items? I also note what is said in 635, and it's a little bit convoluted, I thought.
Jocelyn, you're over.
Of course, not Chair. Or expected to be present within part of the application site. Historically, England highlights that harm to non-designated buried archaeological through direct impact during the construction of the park would be a high level of less than substantial harm, potentially substantial harm, depending on any remains found. I hope that means that we'll be looking after the archaeological side of it and give them time for that work to be done and not rushed, as has happened. If one looks at the media, happens at other archaeological sites, they only have a certain length of time to do things. So I would hope that. Also, the maintenance of the garden. And it was referred to in an earlier application today that there are maintenance agreements put in place. I can't see anything. Who will have responsibility for maintaining the garden? Is that Shropshire Council, Shrewsbury Town Council, or yet to be decided?
Roger?
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, in terms of Andy. Yeah, in terms of maintenance of the park, there are conditions to do with a maintenance strategy that needs to be submitted to ourselves to sign off. At this moment in time, Shropshire Council, the owners of the lands, and at the moment, Shropshire Council will be the ones to maintain that park. But that changes. That was obviously that's out of my control. In terms of the archaeological points that you made, I think Andy can comment on that one. I think it's something already. And in terms of the new uses, Within the park area itself, at the podium level, the intention is to provide, say pop-up stalls and activities. And in terms of the wider sites, so obviously a good chunk of the site is not within the park, and that's where we're looking at the building blocks to go on. If for any reason there's delay for that to work to commence, there's the potential with the condition that would impose for that site then to be activated as well. Maybe we could have other types of events, other stalls, so that we don't have the core of the site dormant for many, many years. So that's what the reference to the meanwhile uses is about. Don't know if that answers your query, really.
Through you, Chairman, for Dr. Ruby.
I'm not querying that it shouldn't happen. I'm just wondering about how is control to be exercised. Is this via planning permissions or conditions or anything like that? Because
I think
it is an entrance into the town, and it's important.
I think, Roger, that part of that is the reason that they want it, rather than having to wait 4 weeks to bring it back to a committee or anything else. You know, that's where the assistant director wants flexibility to be able to manoeuvre a little bit if required, because they don't know what's there until they start digging it up. And as I say, it is in the interest of the applicant to make sure that they do it in a way that's right and proper. And technically, we are the not technically, we are the applicant. Yeah. So that's why I made a point of saying that I support the request for it to be, you know, organic in the sense that the assistant director can make changes to the conditions as and when they are needed immediately.
And also, you got to remember, you said about other open space, I do, Chair, open space. As we're the applicants, we couldn't have a section 106 in any case.
We're just paying ourselves.
Yeah. So it's conditioned. And Andy, do you?
Thank you. Just coming on in response to Councillor Evans' point. Absolutely note and acknowledge Historic England's comment there. Our difficulties until we get into the ground there and carry out the evaluation, we're not going to know the degree to which they survive, because, as I say, we think they've been quite heavily impacted by the late 20th century redevelopment of that. We will ensure that we do adequately evaluate them, and the archaeological programme that will be required under the condition will provide adequate time to facilitate that happening. As I say, it's a technical exercise because it needs to facilitate going to depth, and below depths we normally operate as in archaeological terms. So, you know, as I say, I'm in active discussions with the developer's archaeological consultant to ensure that there's a programme in place that will enable that to happen, and there will be sufficient time to fully investigate them.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm going to move to a vote because I think we're all broadly supportive. I think a few questions that there were have been adequately addressed. Steve, unfortunately, you did leave the room.
I did need water.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Had you left the room through the chair, I could have just stopped for a couple of minutes while you got one. However, you will not be able to vote because you have not heard the full debate. Okay. Yes.
Sorry, may I just come in and offer just a bit of a corrective? I believe it'll be the head of service.
Head of service.
Who will deal with the amendments to the condition. Sorry.
All right. No, that's absolutely fine. So it's my condition already amended. Well done. Okay, good. I'm not going to go around this time because I think this is likely to be unanimous. So before I ask the solicitor to read out names, is there anybody who's not going to vote for this? With the exception of Councillor Davenport, who's not allowed to vote.
Nobody's proposed it.
Sorry?
Nobody's actually proposed it.
No.
So I propose, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Oh, right. Sorry. Councillor Burchett proposed it. Steve, did you second it then?
Yeah, I moved it or whatever.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll second
well,
it.
You know, honestly,
just for the record.
Let's not have a debate on this. One proposed, one seconded. The minutes can reflect either or. And I think we're all supportive of this, so it will be unanimous. But noting in the minutes that Councillor Davenport, having left the room, was unable to vote. Is that all right with you?
It's on by nature.
Good. Okay. Thank you, members. Thank you. We will move on then to appeals and decisions, which is item 8. Philip, is there anything you wish to say?
No, I just like to note them. Possibly there's one there that I was the case of for this month. I'm afraid.
Would that be Edinburgh House?
I lost it. Yeah. Edinburgh House, yes, and I'm very disappointed in the decision. I still think I was right. It's not. It's an interesting read. I must admit, well, it's not a decision, not to me, but we have had a decision in Oswestry, which actually goes slightly different to this one, but it's each case on its merits, and obviously the inspector saw things slightly different to me.
Any questions for any members about? No. Then we'll move on to item 9 then, which is the date of the next meeting, and that will be held at 2 o'clock. I am presuming in this room, as per normal, it does say that there, on the 9th of April 2024, obviously, because it couldn't be before or after. And that,
I give my apologies for that meeting now. I don't think I'll forget.
okay. Make sure you get a replacement, please. We will close the live feed. When we are closed, Emily will let us know before we start swearing at each other or anything. We need to make sure that